listener production.
Hey, it's Antoinette Lattouf with the Weekend Briefing, and I get to hit pause on the headlines, and instead I zoom in on someone making waves. Oh, in this case, they're making headlines too. Randa Abdel-Fattah is a lawyer, author and academic who wrote her first novel when she was just 12. She has since published 12 books, including her latest, called Discipline, which is about a journalist battling a newsroom's refusal to interrogate war crimes. You may also know Randa from the recent Bendigo Writers Festival controversy, after a coalition of pro-Israel academics pushed for restrictions, and the festival sent speakers a memo essentially warning them not to criticise Israel. As a result, Randa withdrew, and in solidarity, other authors and even the festival's bookseller followed. We cover so much in this chat. How she manages all the sustained attacks on her, which include having her name written on the side of a bomb before it was presumably fired off into Gaza. We talk about whether she has any regrets. And also, we get quite honest about how hard it is to be a parent and do parenting well during an unfolding genocide. Later in the show, it is the weekend list, and that is the cheat sheet on what to watch, see, eat and do, and everything in between. A bunch of stellar tips there, you won't want to miss it. But first, here's my chat with Randa Abdel-Fattah. Randa Abdel-Fattah, welcome to the Weekend Briefing.
Thank you for having me.
So, a lot of people would know your work, or at the very least have seen you in the headlines, but I think very few people get to know you. I want to know what Randa was like as a child.
My mum put me in a PLO jumper at a 1980s birthday party in a Melbourne car park. I remember that.
Okay.
I've always been raised in a very Palestinian political family.
Yeah, okay.
I've always had a very strong sense of my identity.
So PLO, for those who aren't aware, Palestinian Liberation Organisation. So a young Randa, I was thinking, I like to play with dolls.
I loved dolls. I loved Kylie Minogue. I'm a child of the 80s. I grew up in Melbourne, in Naarm. My father's Palestinian, my mother's Egyptian, attended a Catholic school.
Okay.
All these things informed sort of my identity, my confusion, but also my very strong sense that I was connected to communities.
So you're Muslim, but you attended a Catholic school?
Yeah, in primary school, my parents sent me to St. Clement's Catholic school.
Okay, why did they do that?
They wanted a school that had sort of similar religious values, and it was a school that was predominantly Italian migrants. Mm-hmm. And they just felt very much that it was a safe place for me to go to. I loved it. I flourished there, met so many friends, and then attended Australia's very first Islamic school for secondary. Mm-hmm. And that was really where I came into my identity. It was right around the time of the Gulf War. Mm-hmm. And that very much gave me a sense of understanding that I was other.
Yeah.
At that time, we still didn't have a sense of being settlers on stolen land. Mm-hmm. This was a time where, migrants were trying to fit in, belong, create a life for themselves, the pressure financially to make it, that sort of model minority.
Yes.
So all of that politicization came throughout high school, through the context of being otherized in the wider context of the Gulf War and the Arab and the Muslim being seen as a fifth column.
And for a moment, I just want to know a little bit more about your parents. So what was their story and their journey to Australia?
So my father's older than the State of Israel. He was born in 1945 and he grew up in Nablus in a village called Borka. His family was irrevocably impacted by the creation of the State of Israel. They fell into extreme poverty, and like so many Palestinian families then, the older sons were sent to the Gulf-rich, states like Kuwait to work and, send money back and support the family there. My father went to high school in Kuwait and then 1967 occupation happened. So it was shut out.
Right. So they weren't driven out in the Nakba. They still remained, albeit in poverty.
Yes. Yeah. My grandmother and my aunts remained, and then my uncle and my father went to Kuwait. And then during the 1967 war, they were not allowed to return. So he became stateless and got a scholarship with the United Nations Refugee Works Agency to study in Egypt. And then after he finished his master's, he had a choice between the UK and Australia, and was told the weather's better in Australia, so he chose Australia. Yeah.
And so presumably he met your mum in Egypt?
No, here in Australia.
Okay.
Yeah, and my mum's Egyptian. And also her family, again, impacted by like the wider implications of colonialism and we're going to do a long history lesson. I won't, but because of like the nationalisation with Jamal Abdel Nasser, President Jamal Abdel Nasser, my grandfather, who was a very, very prominent architect, lost everything and decided that the writing was on the wall in Egypt and they would need to migrate, so came to Australia.
So you're in an Islamic school in high school and you write your first novel in year 10?
Yeah, I wrote sort of about a 90,000-page novel. Yeah, I was a nerd. But it was
90,000 pages or 90,000 words?
90,000 words.
Okay, so because I'm almost finished my book and it is not easy to write 90,000 words. It's taken me a long time.
It took about a year of working on the weekends, and I had never, in my mind, it was a book where I wanted to see myself in fiction because I've always loved writing and reading.
Yeah.
And I kind of felt that I wanted to write the story of just growing up as an Australian Muslim wearing hijab, because I wore hijab in high school, and all the complications of doing that. It was very much a book set in a time where we were just desperate to be seen as human, as normal, as, we were always trying to create our identities in response to what we weren't, the stereotypes. So it was very much sort of a defiance against those like very dominant stereotypes about us and generalizations, to speak back to that.
What is the book called?
It's called Does My Head Look Big in This? So I put it aside. It was rejected by publishers, but such beautiful rejection letters. I still have them. Yeah. Like, this is the first book that's been written by a Western, raised Muslim, but go away, like grow up a little bit, improve the writing. Yeah.
And you came back to it?
I did. I got married. I moved to Sydney, started working as a lawyer, and wrote it on the train ride from Quakers Hill Station to the city, on the way back, and edited it at lunchtime.
And so how much did it change and evolve from 16-year-old to 20-something-year-old?
The plot stayed the same.
Yeah.
The writing just got better. And, of course, something else happened, 9/11. So it became a post-9/11 novel. I'm
keen to know what drew you to study law and arts.
Again, it's like from a family where like the sense of justice and the sense of standing up for truth, for defending others, was just something that it was just inculcated from a young age. My mother's a teacher as well, and it was very much the way I was raised and socialised. And I've always loved words and writing, so it felt like just a natural progression for me to do arts and law.
From that arts and law degree, from that first book as a 16-year-old, you've now written 12 books. We're going to talk about Discipline, your most recent books. But what for you has been the most kind of satisfying or rewarding experience? Was it having your initial idea as a 16-year-old finally published? Was it one of the many awards that you've won? What is it that means the most to you?
What means the most, I think, is when young people from my community write to me. And, I really don't mean this in a very sort of cliche way, but I have always felt that sense of wanting to write for my community, for their gaze primarily, rather than a wider audience. And for them to say to me that they feel validated or that they feel seen, there's nothing that compares with that. No review compares with that, or no award, because like that raw honesty from a young person is just, it's the best compliment that you can receive, to have given somebody a chance to be themselves in a book, to see themselves, to have, their deepest, darkest fears and anxieties dramatised in a way where they can explore it in a safe way. I think, that means a lot.
Well, I guess for teenagers, everybody struggles with identity. It's not something particular to women. It's not something for women from ethnic minority backgrounds. But when it's politicised, when your identity is politicised, it becomes a whole lot harder. Were you writing, in a way to fill the void that we had growing up, because there was looking for Alla Brandi?
Yeah, that was on my keyboard.
Looking for Alla Brandi, because, she was an Italian girl, was it? An ethnic girl at a school and wanted to have a boyfriend or something, and that was the closest we could get. Did that inspire the beginnings of some of your writing, trying to fill that gap?
Inspiration.
It was, okay.
It was on my keyboard,
specifically.
like literally,
yes,
It blew me away. I think it was one of the very first novels that sort of delved into that without making the novel about identity.
Yes,
so it just happened that she was Italian. And with my first book and the books after that, I really wanted to to show exactly that, the full complexity of being somebody who has these multiple intersecting, identities, and not to say, look, we're like you, but to actually honour those experiences. And again, just give a voice to those who don't see that in books unless they are the enemy in a book or the problem character or just some cliche one-dimensional character.
You're clearly somebody many young women look up to, but being one of the first can be really tricky because when you're at the front, it means the attacks only have one place to land. That's been heightened for you in the past couple of years, but it's not new. Talk me through what it has been like being an academic with a Muslim background who is vocal about politics, about identity, and about human rights.
It's not something that I would have any other way. It's just I feel that this is who I am, and I could easily have a really fantastic academic career if I shut up. I could, climb the ranks, but I've seen what that does. It means that you get to the top and you won't sign a statement of solidarity for Palestine. You can get to the top of a discipline in which you've written countless books and articles about genocide, but you won't even say genocide. You won't even speak up against it. So I know what success and ambition gets you in academia or in law when I was a lawyer. And I don't aspire to that. I aspire to being able to look myself in the mirror and say that I stood up for people who are being massacred, that I stood up for the truth. And to me, of course there are risks that come with speaking, but honestly, genuinely, who am I to even complain about that when people are making the ultimate sacrifice in Gaza with their lives? So for me, I'm not doing it for them, I'm doing it for myself.
You've been suspended from your role at Macquarie University. You're clearly someone who's determined, but what has been the most harrowing attack on you? Has anything given you a moment to pause and go, okay, maybe not. Maybe I shouldn't keep talking. Maybe I need to pull back. Maybe I need to, soften my language.
No, never. It's never even occurred to me. The harder they go, the harder I will go. Because I feel a responsibility. You said before that I was one of the first. Yep, okay. So I wrote one of the first books, and I take a lot of responsibility with that. There is absolutely no point in marking a path if it stops after you and if it just makes your life easier and doesn't actually expand the horizon of freedom and liberation for other people coming behind you and alongside you. So it's never been an option. You asked me what the most harrowing. I think the most disappointing experience has been having my Australian Research Council's grant suspended because it was so heavily politicised. It really was a coordinated campaign, which they took credit for, between Murdoch media, between the coalition, between pro-Israel organisations. That was the culmination of months of going after my job. And to see institutions buckle like that, to see people sacrifice all the values that they profess to hold dear as an institution, as an academic institution, to see the Minister for Education capitulate like that was extremely disappointing. But it just mobilises and emboldens me and empowers me to know that, well, obviously my voice makes them afraid. And that means I'm just going to keep pushing.
You speak about being afraid, and obviously that is linked to safety. And it was these notions of safety and afraid that was one of the things that you were criticised for, where you said that Zionists shouldn't have cultural safety on university campuses. And this was when there were a lot of encampments at universities in protest to Israel's actions and in support for Palestinian human rights. There has this been real weaponisation and focus on safety. And how do we manage the subjective feelings that some people may feel unsafe? So if a Jewish student says, I feel unsafe, and that is their subjective feeling, that is how they feel. We can't deny how somebody feels with the objective facts about human safety that we're currently witnessing.
Yeah, because feelings aren't facts. But to go to the point about the cultural safety tweet, which got me in a lot of trouble, it was actually in direct response to what happened to a group of artists who were invited to the Victorian State Library to run poetry and writing workshops online, including Omar Sakr. And one of the reasons cited as an excuse to sack them from that role was that they threatened the cultural safety of participants. And it was this weaponisation of very specific language that actually is rooted in Indigenous knowledge production and Indigenous policies around cultural safety for Indigenous peoples in institutions that are historically harmful. It was never intended to be weaponized by settlers or oppressors or people who cause harm in order to protect themselves. And so it was never about physical safety or psychological safety or emotional safety, although I think that's debatable. And I also made it very specific that this idea of cultural safety, we don't extend it to misogynists. We don't extend it to homophobes. We don't extend it to white supremacists. And in the same way, we shouldn't extend it to Zionists on the basis that it is a political ideology. I have no issue. In fact, I stand firm that everybody has the right to physical safety. Everybody has the right to safety. And, Muslims, Jews, Buddhists, atheists all have the right to safety. But this was a very, very particular language that I was using and context. And then, of course, it was completely not only weaponized, but very disingenuously appropriated to claim, even under parliamentary privilege, that I said that Jews don't have the right to safety. So completely misquoting my words to push that agenda that I am anti-Semite.
Yeah, right. It just feels wild.
It is wild.
It just feels wild that when we talk about, a notion of cultural safety against the backdrop of human beings not being safe to go and collect a bag of flour during a genocide and a man-made famine. We talk about the idea of cultural safety on campus when it comes to students who are protesting the right of civilians to feel safe while they're sleeping in their tents.
This is the violence of it. And this is like, you asked me before about what do you say to a Jewish student on campus who feels unsafe by these protests? I would say, what is it about protesting genocide that frustrates you and makes you feel unsafe? It's not my problem. That is a problem that you need to go seek therapy on. If protesting genocide disturbs you, then I'm not going to do the work for you to ask you, where is your humanity? And again, just this complete dissonance between the fact that there are bombs dropping, there are drones and robot explosives dropping on human beings in Gaza, and I'm supposed to worry about whether some words are going to offend somebody who supports those bombs dropping, who supports my genocide. It is the essence of anti-Palestinian racism to ask me as a Palestinian to think about, how do my oppressors feel?
There was a moment, because Randa, you and I have known each other for a long time, when I did see that tweet and I just thought, maybe I should reach out to Randa because I know how this could be misconstrued and I know how this may be weaponized. And you want to know why I didn't? I stopped myself because I thought, I'm not here to tell a Palestinian woman how to feel and what arrangement of words to use when objecting a genocide.
This is something that I and other people, Palestinians in particular, within workplaces are constantly having to do in multiple disciplinary meetings and, talks on the side. Can you just tone down your language? Can you just, use different metaphors or different verbs? And I have to keep saying, we are not allowed to be angry. We are not allowed to be completely freaking out about what we are witnessing live streamed on our phones every day. And yes, sometimes we might use language that isn't palatable to you, but I hope that genocide isn't palatable to you. And very often when my tweets are misquoted, what they always conveniently erase is that I'm often quote tweeting an image or a video.
Yes, of atrocity.
Of horror, absolute horror. And it's always my rage and my anger and my righteous anger is always seen in a vacuum, which goes back to this idea that we are just angry Arab women because it's gendered as well. We are irrational, we are haters. It's never, ever contextualized within the context of their oppression and their genocide.
So your new book, Discipline, is fiction, but it reads like non-fiction because it's about a young Muslim Arab journalist in a newsroom trying to navigate finding her place in a newsroom, but also against the backdrop of human rights atrocities against Palestinians and, managing editors and all the expectations and community expectations. I mean, how much of that book feels like fiction when you were writing it?
So I actually started writing it in around 2021, 2022.
Which is crazy because reading that, I thought, did you just start writing this in the past 18 months?
No, and I still got all the notes. It was actually an ensemble book which had 5 characters, and I put it aside because I actually put it aside. I have an email to a publisher in September 2023 saying, do you think there's an appetite for a book like this? Have people forgotten the racialisation of Western Sydney suburbs and young Arab Muslim youth and the racism within the academia and the media because it looks at both characters and worlds. And so I put it aside, and then October 7 happened and I was creatively paralysed. I think I returned to it a few months later. I wrote and I finished writing it within 4 months. And honestly, fact couldn't keep up with the fictional world. And then I deliberately set it in May 2021 as a kind of cautionary tale, a foreshadowing of what happens when people are silent, when those with privilege choose to remain silent. And we have the evidence of that now.
Even when you don't want to be silenced, as we've both learned, institutions often want you to be silent. We must talk about Bendigo Writers Festival because the very book that you were there to promote, which ironically, I don't even know if you can say ironically, which madly canvasses all of the things that then happened to you when a memo went out to authors. Essentially, this is the too long did it read version. Don't criticise Israel on any of your panels. I mean, what was it like reading that email?
It's like you said, ironic doesn't capture it. And that's why I had so much fun writing this book, if you could say fun, writing through a genocide. But sometimes these institutions need to be ridiculed, and the utter madness and insanity of what they do, and the veneer needs to come down, and they need to be exposed because all the things that they laud themselves for are so easily able to be collapsed because they are so intent on appeasing the lobby and protecting a state from criticism. So when I received that code, I thought, oh, this is about me. I'm the only Palestinian, actually. I think I was the only Palestinian writer at the festival. And it was a no-brainer. There was no way that I was going to commit because it required you to commit to it. And I felt there's no way I can be disingenuous and do that.
But what did you sit and talk about? What did they expect you to do on the panel? What could you do?
I honestly think my presence as a Palestinian is disturbing enough because they know that I have been followed at every event and anything I say then gets, spun into an article in the Murdoch press. And most institutions, I don't think are ideologically committed to Zionism. I think they are just cowards and feckless managerial class who won't stand up and say enough is enough.
Who go into this kind of
panic,
crazy corporate brand mode, which actually decimates their brand.
Absolutely. And they instead choose to engage with us and treat us as risk management, rather than as human beings. Yeah, so it was an absolute farce to be told that my voice would be managed on a panel where I was speaking about managed voices and silenced voices. Can't make it up.
Did the pace and the scale of the solidarity surprise you? Because I dare say that wouldn't have happened a year or so ago.
Yeah, well, we have the example of the Sydney Festival, the 2022 Sydney Festival, and I was heavily involved in that boycott movement as well. So I know what it means when people their hands need to be held through, these sorts of movements. And this was entirely different. This was incredibly humbling and just so empowering to see, a momentum of writers and artists withdraw, not just in solidarity, but for their own principles, understanding the bigger picture here. It's not just about Palestine. Palestine reveals that it's a litmus test for everything. I didn't ask anybody to withdraw. I did it myself, and yet so many did. So I think that this is a real turning point, a tipping point, and I hope institutions can take heed about what's happening because most people are just not putting up with this culture of repression and silencing anymore.
It does feel that Bendigo Writers Festival and a whole bunch of other institutions haven't learnt a great deal in the past couple of years. What should they be doing in the face of lobbying pressure and Murdoch attacks?
When you look at the kind of complaints that they receive, they're so obviously frivolous and vexatious and defamatory. So at the basic level, some due diligence would be nice. Don't just panic and take things at face value. Understand the politics behind this because the politics has been something that the pro-Israel lobby has been very open about their tactics and about their campaigns and the way that they pressure institutions. So it would be about admitting to that. But I also understand that institutions are still agents of the kind of white supremacist culture that we have in Australia and that structural racism. So it's kind of like asking people to turn on themselves as well, because they would have to admit that there's a lot of work that needs to be done to dismantle those systems that protect this kind of pressure groups. So I think that we just have to keep doing the work to lift the mask, to expose these machinations behind the scene. And it's about people power and mobilising people, enough people that speak up. It will upturn the system.
Is it evidence that boycotts work?
Yeah, absolutely. Obviously, when you have a boycott, there are people who get hurt. And, the local businesses, the bookshop that, was just so beautiful and withdrew as well. So many people are impacted. But again, this speaks to the fact that you have to target those who are responsible for this in the end, and they need to take accountability for the consequences of their actions. So they thought they were just going to get me, but in the end, they decimated an entire writers' festival and they have done irreparable damage to the reputation of Bendigo Festival. It's going to take a long time for it to be able to salvage its credibility. So I hope that people can see that this is much, much more beyond me, that everybody needs to take a stand here.
What's the danger to society when arts institutions and festivals and universities and media outlets are all muzzled?
Well, we can see that what happens is we take the conversation somewhere else. We create our own spaces. And on the one hand, I actually see that because the pace of repression has been it's been escalating and escalating, we have actually stepped up to the task. Community has stepped up to this moment and created alternative spaces. And we've been able to forge our own paths, forge our own spaces where we can do this work and speak to each other, build ourselves up in each other. And I think that's what they fear as well. So sometimes there is a seduction in thinking being in the mainstream, being platformed, is where power lies, is where your voice can be heard. And of course, you want to reach mass audiences. But there is also a lot of power in being in the margins. You're doing the work on the ground with people in solidarity. You're building up your capability to stand up to that kind of power. So I don't think it's all entirely lost, but people need to be held accountable and institutions need to be accountable. You don't get to talk about diversity, equity, inclusion and acknowledgements of country when you're doing this kind of stuff. So you can either own up to who you really are or face the music.
In addition to witnessing an unfolding genocide in Gaza and having enormous attacks on your professional career, on your reputation, on your physical safety, you're also a mother of 4, which is something that, for reasons I probably understand and empathise with, you don't share a lot on social media and perhaps many people in the public don't know. You still have to be a parent in all of this madness. What has that been like for you?
It's been the most challenging part of everything, of being a Palestinian, actually.
Parenting in a genocide.
Yes, yeah, because every day that you're fighting, you're taking away the mental and emotional energy to be present with your children. And at the same time, you can't stop fighting because you're fighting for them. Because I'm fighting in a world where people who look like my children are discarded and dispensed with, and their body parts are being, buried in plastic bags or their children, brothers' backpacks. So I am in a world where my children, and by extension all children, are potentially dispensable. And so I can't stop that fight, but of course it's draining at times. It means that you can't necessarily be the best version of yourself at home, but you just keep going, doing a lot of work.
I find that I have a shorter fuse. I find that if my children don't finish their meals or complain about what I'm packing for lunch, I'm probably like a broken record. I'm like, you will eat all of that?
Yes.
Do you know children are starving? Do you know they're not only starving, they're being shot while they're trying to get food? And I'm like, I don't know how much damage I'm doing to my children. Just kind of yelling at them. And I'm like, look at this picture. Look at this emaciated child. Eat your vegetables. And I'm like, and I'm so angry all the time.
Yes, yeah. Definitely there's a shorter fuse because you're operating at a different sort of level of stress and panic about the kind of world that they're being raised in and what is their future. But they also remind me a lot about letting go of that and just being in the moment with them. But I can top that in terms of guilt.
Oh, okay, good.
My son is in year 12. So imagine going to him, and he always laughs about this, with like videos from students in Gaza who send me videos of them like studying for their year 12. And I'm like, see?
They're studying in the rubble.
You're playing Fortnite they're studying in a genocide. He's like, Mum, seriously, stop it.
What about like crying in front of them? Because I find myself crying a lot more. Yeah. And this has turned into a therapy session, by the way.
2 Arab women in a room during a genocide.
No, I'm actually tearing up.
I'm not an easy crier. I think I've had all my tears just out. I'll cry at random moments. So I'll be at the shops with my kids.
Now, sorry.
Yeah, that's fine. Like I'm
probably used to it.
I am in a lot in a state of disassociation for most of the time as a protective defense mechanism. And then I'll probably cry on the way home today. It will just hit me. But yeah, I see it.
It's so hard to parent at the moment.
Like you said, I keep thinking they're going to be in therapy one day. But at the same time, and I truly believe this, Antoinette, that they'll be proud of us because we fought for them. And I truly believe this. I'm doing it for them. I would love to be that mum who steps back and just, I am a soccer mum. But I would love to be. I'm a soccer mum and a taekwondo mum. I would love to be that mum who sits and, goes through her phone and just taps out of the world instead of that mum who's watching them during taekwondo on her laptop doing Canva tiles about genocide.
Yeah.
But every time I do that, I say I do it because of them, because I have to fight for that world. I don't want my children to grow up in a world where genocide is normalised. So I have to keep reminding myself of that to give me the strength. And obviously everyone makes mistakes as parents. I think our mistakes will be gentler. I honestly think that, because it's coming from a place of complete and utter care and revolutionary love. So I think we can take comfort in that.
Thank you so much for your time, Randa.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Antoinette.
That is Randa Abdel-Fattah, lawyer, academic, and her latest book, Discipline, is available now. It is that time of the week. It's the weekend list. It's where Helen Smith and I give you unsolicited advice on what to do with your time, with your taste buds, with your money, because we're a little bit bossy like that. Helen, what have you got?
My first recommendation is a documentary on Netflix. Now, it's a little bit old. It came out in 2024, but it's Martha. So it's the documentary about the life of Martha Stewart, and it stars like her in it talking to us. So which she rarely ever does.
Yeah.
Now, it's still on Netflix if you haven't seen it, but it goes over her rise to fame, her becoming the first female self-made billionaire in the United States. It also covers when she went to prison for charges relating to stock trading, and also her rise back to relevancy after that and her friendship, like best friends with Snoop Dogg.
Yeah.
So just all this bizarre kind of, her life is so bizarre and so wild and over the top, but it really shows you a behind the scenes of who she is, her personality, and how just cutthroat she is.
Yeah.
Which I think is why she's so successful in that business world.
Do you think it was a bit of a PR doco to get her reputation, back on track or whatever?
Yes and no, because after it came out, I really liked it, but Martha actually criticised it and she wasn't a fan of some of the of the shots in it. This is a quote from her. She goes, "Those last scenes with me looking like a lonely old lady walking hunched over in the garden, boy, I told them to get rid of those and he refused," talking about the director there. "I hate those last scenes, hate them."
Okay.
So, look, not everything painted in the doco was what she liked.
Yeah.
And it did touch on her affairs and the questioning of it that actually went viral at the time, how she was criticising her then husband that he, had this affair and everything. And then the producer, you can hear, asks her, "Didn't you have an affair?" And she goes, "Oh, it was nothing." She was pretty much literally just she puts it to the side, and that kind of moment went viral about her dismissing kind of her affair. And then she also kissed this Italian boy, all this stuff. And it was like,
oh, man,
Martha, what's going on here?
Martha.
Yeah. So, entertaining. It just takes you behind the scenes of just another world that many of us will not ever see and won't be a part of, probably for good reasons sometimes.
Yeah.
But yeah, I really recommend that. That's Martha on Netflix.
Okay. I have something for the taste buds, and it's pretty simple, pretty cheap, and it looks fancy. So if you only have about 20 minutes to make something, okay, you might need a little bit more because the oven needs to preheat. What I've been doing lately is buying frozen barramundi. and they come in packets of
Yeah.
6 or 7. Because a lot of the times when you go to the supermarket, I don't know if you know, but the fish that is being sold to you has been frozen. So, when you go to the section, you're like,
and they just unfreeze it and it's fresh apparently. And I'm like, what?
Yeah, because it's like snap frozen or whatever. So don't turn your nose up to the frozen stuff because it's probably the same stuff that you're buying
and it's cheaper.
And it's cheaper. So anyway, it's frozen barramundi in a pack that used to come in a 6-pack. You defrost them in the fridge overnight. And all I do is I get foil and I put the pieces in. Each has its own piece of foil. And I mince garlic, chop up fresh chilies, a bit of lime juice, fish sauce and brown sugar. So you mix up the sauce on the side, garlic, crushed chilies, lime juice, fish sauce and brown sugar. And you just drizzle it all over and then wrap it up in the foil and pop it in the oven. In another tray, I do a side of broccolini and fresh unsalted peanuts and slivered almonds on the broccolini. And if I have any of the sauce left, which I usually do, then I drizzle it on top. 15 to 20 minutes later, it comes out. So you've got these nuts and broccolini and this fish. And when you open it, because of the garlic and that, it all just looks really fancy. And it is not fancy at all. And it takes, 15 minutes in the oven.
Yum. That actually sounds so good.
Yeah.
I'm going to do that, hands down.
So that is my recommendation. Frozen barramundi and broccolini on the side.
I love that one.
Okay.
I'm definitely going to do that. My next recommendation is, again, nothing new, but if you just need a little bit of a refresh, it's Depop, the app. Have you heard Depop?
No.
It's a fashion app where it's kind of like Marketplace, Facebook, but an app that's just for clothes, accessories, shoes, everything like that. And usually they're really good quality. You can buy it from all around Australia, and I think you can do international as well. But it's a secondhand clothes app pretty much.
Yeah.
So if you are looking to do a spring clean out, you can put anything up there that's probably you could sell for $20 or even $100 or whatever that's worth. Or if you are looking for new clothes coming into spring or something warmer, why not just buy it from Depop and it's, secondhand, you're saving on fast fashion, you're saving on the environment, and it is a bit cheaper. So I definitely recommend that if you're looking for something maybe for an event or something new, or you want to clean out your closet and make a little bit of money.
Oh, that's a good one. Because they've often got stuff in your closet and you're like, I don't want to get rid of it because it's in really good shape, but I actually never wear it. I think there's a rule if you haven't, there's no rule, but a bit of a guide that if you've not worn it for 3 months, chances are you're not going to wear it.
3 months, damn. Okay. I got to get rid of so much stuff.
Either do a clothes swap with friends, sell it. I'm not definite, don't send it to landfill because we know how terrible that is, but do something with it because if it's just sitting there, other than if it's a ball gown or something that you don't wear because you haven't worn your bikinis because it's not seasonal. But if something's been sitting there for months and months and you haven't worn it, chances are that you're not going to wear it.
Get rid of it.
So you probably all heard me snort crying a little bit earlier. I do get sad and heavy sometimes. So I have been sharing things that help me. Last week it was laying on the floor and I did appreciate the feedback that some other people do that. Mine is to go to a dog park. This might not seem like much, but my advice is go even if you don't have a dog because they just bring so much joy, even watching their interactions. You don't have to go near one if you don't want to or touch ones, but there's just something about it, and which is why they take dogs into nursing homes. It's why dogs are taken to sick children.
It's why they make them therapy animals.
They're like fluffy dopamine.
Yeah.
Absolutely fluffy dopamine. And so, yes, I do have my a little dog who I adore, but so often when I take him to the dog park, it's less for him and more for me because...
You're like, dog, you could leave it in her home.
Yeah, I'm just it's just me today, buddy.
I'll bring you.
It's just me today, buddy, going to the dog park because just, being outdoors and just, I don't know, just makes me smile.
Yeah.
And I'm all for doing little things that make you smile more, that don't cost anything, that are outdoors. So just try it.
No, I love that. I do that all the time because my dogs are in Adelaide with my mum.
So you go to the dog park?
Yeah. And there's one actually near a park that I go to all the time. And I'm a Chihuahua girl, right? Okay. Chihuahuas, they're divisive. A lot of people hate them.
Yeah.
Not me. There's one Chihuahua at this park that I go to all the time and he's always there and I love it so much and always comes up to me. I always say hi. And I've actually low-key made friends with the owners. I think they think I'm a bit weird, but I'm like, whatever. I'm like, hey, your dog's running around here. Yeah. It's free. I can be like, hey, doggy. Okay. So yeah, I love that recommendation and yeah.
There you are. Dog park. endorsed by Helen Smith. I suggest you do it. Let us know what you think about it. We love to hear your feedback. But that is it for the Weekend List. Thank you so much for listening. We do appreciate you hanging out with us every week. And I would also love if you could just take a moment to hit follow, leave a review, leave a rating, 5 or above. Okay, you can't go above 5, so just go 5. And I would also love to read your thoughts on this really honest chat with Randa Abdel-Fattah. The team will be back in your headphones on Monday with the headlines and a fascinating deep dive. Take care of one another. I will catch you next week.